Okay, let's talk about one of the most common, and honestly, one of the most expensive pieces of advice you'll ever hear in Blackjack. It's this idea that you should just sit back and wait for the dealer to go bust.
You've heard it a million times at the table, right? Maybe you've even said it yourself. And why not? It sounds so patient, so disciplined. It just feels like the smart, safe thing to do.
But here's the thing. That comforting little phrase is actually a really costly misconception. It's a quiet mistake that slowly but surely tilts the odds even more in the casino's favor, hand after hand. So, to really tear this myth apart, we first have to understand why it's so darn convincing. Let's look at what it's really claiming, and why, on the surface, it feels so true. Basically, this myth completely reframes the game. It tells you that your best move is to do, well, nothing. Just wait for the dealer to fail. It tries to turn a game of calculated decisions into a passive waiting game. And this feels so logical because of a little trick our brains play on us called availability bias. We remember those exciting, dramatic moments when the dealer does bust really vividly. And because those memories are so strong, we start to think it happens way more often than it actually does. All right, so now let's push those feelings aside and look at the actual numbers. This is where what the game feels like clashes with what the math proves. And here it is, the single most critical mistake this myth is built on. The dealer's chance of busting is not one fixed number. It changes dynamically with every single card that's revealed. So using a general average for a very specific hand, that's the core error. And this slide just lays it out perfectly. Look at the difference. When a dealer is showing a weak card, like a 5 or a 6, yeah, their chance of busting is higher. But look what happens when they have a strong card, like a 10 or an ace. That probability plummets. Just waiting for a bust in that situation? That's not strategy, that's just wishful thinking. Okay, so if we can't just cross our fingers and hope for a dealer bust, what is the real decision we have to make when we're sitting there with a tough hand, like a 15 or 16? Think about it this way. When you stand, you have exactly one way to win. The dealer must bust. You lose to any and every hand they make. But hitting, yeah, you risk busting right away. But you also open up a bunch of new ways to actually win the hand, or at the very least, push. And this gets to the absolute core of smart blackjack. It's not always about trying to win every hand. Sometimes, it's about making the choice that loses the least amount of money over the long haul. It's called minimizing your expected loss, and it's why proper strategy will sometimes tell you to take a risk that feels, really uncomfortable. So let's talk about the real cost of following this myth. The danger isn't that you'll have one big catastrophic loss. No, it's much quieter. It's a slow, steady drain on your bankroll, one hand at a time. See, every single time you choose to passively wait for that dealer bust, instead of making the mathematically correct play, you are literally giving the casino a bigger advantage. You're handing them a little piece of your edge for free. And while any single decision, like standing on a 16 against a dealer's 10, might feel small and insignificant, you do that hundreds or thousands of times, will those tiny little edges you gave away stack up into real, meaningful losses? To break this cycle, to stop this slow leak, you have to completely reframe the question you're asking yourself when you're in one of those tough spots. It's time to change that internal monologue. So instead of asking a question that's based purely on hope, will the dealer bust, you need to ask a question based on math. Which of my choices is going to lose me less money in the long run? That right there is the shift from just gambling to playing with a real, deliberate strategy.
Look, the dealer will bust sometimes, but it's just not going to happen often enough to save you from making passive, incorrect decisions. A true strategy means you have to accept calculated risks when the math tells you that risk is cheaper than just waiting and hoping. Letting go of this myth doesn't make the game harder. It makes you a much, much smarter player.